A few years ago I was working on a project in Whanganui and drove my Land Rover Discovery down the Parikino Road on a beautiful clear February evening and thought how great it would be to drive my Series 1 down this road with the lid off in the same conditions. This year the team decided to hold the annual Series 1 gathering in Whanganui, and as luck would have it, I got to drive my Series 1 down the Parikino Road in the exact same conditions I experienced all those years ago. Just a stunning evening. What a great start to the weekend. This year we had a very special guest coming along, Oxford, the first vehicle to ever drive overland from London to Singapore back in 1955. Oxford is here in New Zealand on a solo journey around the world. Thanks to the generosity of Oxford's owner, Adam Bennett, and the support of Land Rover New Zealand and Star Insurance, we're able to have Oxford in the Whanganui for our meeting. The journey from Auckland to Whanganui is 450 kilometres and should take about 5.5 hours to drive it, or 7 hours in a Series 1 Land Rover. By 7 PM I was really looking forward to a cold beer and a quick burger, but our hosts for the weekend, Philip and Gillian Avery, had arranged for a double-decker bus to pick us all up and take us on a tour of their hometown, Whanganui. But don't panic team, I managed to gag a beer and a burger down just before the bus arrived. We were dropped off in the Victorian district at the southern end of Victoria Ave for a quick look at some of the large street art that decorates many of the old Victorian buildings in the area. We had a great time on the old bus, directing traffic as the bus was having some issues exiting the tight narrow side streets, but we made it up to Virginia Lake just on dusk, then back home for another quiet ale and bed. As Philip had informed us, we had a big day the next day.
Down to the river market, and there you can have a look around and buy something for lunch. There's a lot of food options there, so have a good look around. And then the bus will pick you back up approximately 45 minutes after he drops you off. Jilly will announce she'll be guiding you down there. I'll be staying at the top looking after you.
Did you go from the place where the traffic light and then go my way looking
This morning we're heading up Durry Hill, where we will meet the double-decker bus again for a short visit to the river markets on the city side of the river, as there's limited parking around the markets and Philip was going to stay with the vehicles as they cannot be secured. Whanganui has a very interesting history and has long been a major port and portage both pre- and post-European settlement from 1841, due to the size and the length of the Whanganui River, which starts in the centre of the North Island on the slopes of Mount Nawahaui. The Whanganui River has been the main access route to the interior for hundreds of years for both Maori and European. As a result, it was a wealthy district up until the 1940s, when the soldier resettlement areas started to fail mainly due to access issues due to the papa clay in the district. Built in 1925, the Durry Hill War Memorial Tower is constructed from shell rock, or rock composing of fossilised seashells quarried inland from Whanganui. The tower was built as a memorial for the horrific death toll New Zealand suffered during the First World War. 120,000 New Zealanders served during the First World War, which was about 12% of New Zealand's population. 20,000 of those who served abroad did not return, or about 2% of the population. As part of the Discharged Soldiers Settlements Act, returned servicemen could apply for an allotment of land at a Lands and Surveys office, and many of these allotments were in the steep papa clay country east of Whanganui and South Taranaki. I'm not really into street markets, and I already had my lunch, so I went for a walk around Motua Gardens. Motua Gardens is a memorial to the battle between the friendly Ngāti Hau and the fanatical Hau from the Pipariki area in May 1864. The Hau were travelling down the Whanganui River to drive the Europeans into the sea. They were challenged and defeated on an island in the middle of the Whanganui River, now known as Motua, the Isle of Heroes. In the 1860s, Whanganui was a fortified town. With the opening up of the land up in the Whanganui to soldier settlements, and the main trunk railway from Auckland terminating at Taumanui, a regular riverboat service was available for farming communities up the river as well as tourists. This was the main route between Auckland and Wellington, up until the main trunk line was completed from Taumanui to Wellington in 1908. You could travel up to Whanganui by train from Wellington, catch the paddle steamer from Whanganui as far as the Pipariki Hotel, and then board one of the tunnel-hull boats to continue the journey up the Whanganui River to Taumanui, before reboarding the train to Auckland. What an amazing journey that would have been. We all set off in convoy from Durry Hill along number 2 line to Ford L, where Philip and Gillian had prepared a gymkhana for us all to test our driving skills. The gymkhana had nothing damaging or scratchy, simple hill climbs and sidlings followed by some coordinated driving skills. Hopefully everyone got to have a drive in Oxford.
See the road? Yep.
He's pulling the rope in tight.
Hold the steering wheel on the same position. How are you going to manage this without a passenger?
So we come over to the sunny side. The object of this section was to drive as slowly as possible. The winner would be the vehicle that travelled the least distance without stalling. It was already mid-afternoon before we headed off to follow the Whangaehu River valley inland to a forestry block. We stopped off to admire the $3.4 million Upokongaro cycle bridge before heading back to camp for a swim in a dust removing beer. Later that night, we were sitting around the table at camp when all of our phones started to beep. My hometown of Auckland had gone into another COVID lockdown. Naturally, all of my good friends from Wellington were very supportive of my situation. So ready for another day of four-wheel drive action? Yeah, well, maybe not. But someone suggested that we needed to do a quick drive down to the beach, so we did.
What a great sight.
It is, eh?
Yeah.
All these mad bastards.
Yeah, yeah. Well, coming down the other day from Whangatani, at some stage of the trip I thought, why would you want to travel in anything else?
Tim Slezzer says, this is motoring.
This is bloody motoring, as it used to be. None of your heated seats and all that crap. Are you listening, Jeremy Clarkson? This is motoring.
It seems so right.
Bloody hoons.
So you're on a farm?
Sorry?
You're on a farm?
Yeah. On sheep farm.
Who is responsible for this happening?
We headed across the Whanganui and headed inland on State Highway 4 and followed the river, before turning off at Whangaehu Road and heading up to the Papa Clay country. The corrugations were really shaking us up, and I had forgotten to engage the freewheeling hubs, so I could select four-wheel drive high ratio, which helps reduce the bumping loss of traction, so I quickly stopped to engage them.
There's been quite a bit.
We just started moving off again and the engine just died. My flash new electronic distributor had completely failed after only 2 days on the road. Fortunately, I'd thrown in the old mechanical distributor, just in case, and only 12 minutes later we were at Oscar Mike and heading back up the road.
Yeah, put the hubs on it. I had the camera running the whole time.
Yes, I had an MGB for a while that I tried to fit electronic ignition to, and it just never worked. So I went back to the way it originally was.
Wrong perceptions about what happened too. They said, oh, the bitch over it, no one ever drove over.
From the moment we left the sealed road, we started climbing as we worked our way higher up the faces of the Papa Clay cliffs, from the cool shadows of one side straight into the bright sunshine, to enjoy our elevated progress high above the valleys below.
It brings you up onto the road where it's called the Bridge to Somewhere.
Okay.
And that comes out at the Strathmore Tunnel, or you can turn right and come out by the Whangamomona Hotel.
Yes.
Back on the Ohura Road, you eventually come out of Ohura.
Yes, yes.
So if you turn left, you go out to Stratford, and that brings you through to the New Plymouth area.
Right. Well, that'll all be interesting travelling.
Most of these roads were cut through in the 1920s to 1940s to open up the country as the soldier rehabilitation farms. In the days before heavy machinery was readily available, to cut these roads and to clear the steep land for grazing, It just leaves you stunned with amazement of the settlers' pioneering spirit to overcome the adversity of the land, the harsh conditions and the isolation.
I fancy farming country like this.
Yeah, it just blows my mind, eh?
Oh,
I was at the Matarawa four-wheel drive trip last year. It worth less, in actual fact it's correct. It's worth less with wool in the wool fashion, a brand new wool fashion.
Oh, well, it certainly costs more to shoe your sheep than you get for the wool now.
No, I'm not breaking even on it.
On the side of a base as big as these. And the only thing that kept the Land Rover from going over the edge was it was a sheep track. It slid to the outside until it got into the sheep track and then followed that down.
Oh,
And
really?
he knew bloody well, and then of course he knew if it didn't fire instantly, he'd be off the side over, and it did, it fired straight away.
It's just to let you know who's boss.
Not a bad signpost for a place like this. No exit each way.
On a track, on a road.
Yeah.
120 vehicles in a convoy, man.
We had the privilege of being hosted by the O'Neills at Mangawhero Station for morning tea to wash the dust down before heading up and over their farm to rejoin State Highway 4.
They said, oh, these would be perfect for you. I said, perfect for what? No, he bought it from Robbie Robinson.
Faster than some of these vehicles go up here.
Ah well, it does happen in the end.
Yeah, we get there. And they, because of we basically stopped us.
The guys are brilliant. They were too scared to get out.
Oh, the driver's side off the edge of the cliff.
Yeah.
And the wheels are hanging off the edge.
Oh,
And his wife just went,
no, well, you don't need to do something like that, do you? So that, yeah, if you're doing it for pleasure, it's amazing the difference an audience makes, isn't it? Yeah.
Following morning tea, we headed northeast out over the lower slopes of Mount Mangawhero, where we had another distributor to rebuild, before descending down to Raupiu Road, out to State Highway 4 near Parikino.
You can hear this dog bark the airstrip. Whangaehu Peninsula, on between the sort of the inland route up to the
Oh dear, that is not a good story. That sort of saved the day for us financially, or yes it did.
holding. Yeah, that's right. Well, the guy was just ringing me just before. Yeah.
Oh.
Last block of land in that family. Yeah. So on the last year, which was funny, it seemed like they all got 6 fingers. You know? Oh, back on the road.
Yep.
But it's how. It's the logistics of it. It's not as simple as just.
So we're going to have lunch at their wool shed. We're moving it after the tea, but it's going to be 2. That's alright, it means we just have one big
Yeah, that's a good idea. No, that's a good idea. Yeah.
We headed down the Mangawhero Road on State Highway 4 before turning off to Don and Liz Polson's property, where over lunch, Don told us about the horrific floods of 2004. Just near their gateway is a phone pole with an air tag nailed to it to indicate the high tide mark during the floods.
That's a huge volume of water, eh?
Oh, God, yes.
Trying to slow it down. And he thinks that Toe destroyed the planet, so his... So,
When you want to get off that darkest ground. When you want to get off the darkest ground, but gravity pulls you straight down.
We headed south out of the Mangawhero Valley and stopped briefly at Jim's Corner for everyone to catch up before heading back to camp via Fordell. A quick scrub up and we strolled across the road for a meal at the Citadel Cafe. Monday morning, and we were paid a visit by the local newspaper reporter who ran an article on our event, while Bert Millman from Wellington gave us a demonstration of an impressive portable power system he had built into his Series 1 that could run an angle grinder and an arc welder. During my research on historic sites of the New Zealand Wars, I came across Strawn's Cave just northeast of Whanganui, and I was keen to have a look, as were a few members of the Series 1 group. We said our goodbyes to some of the crew while the rest of us headed back inland. Back in 1851, David and Elizabeth Strawn and their children arrived in Whanganui, where they lived for about 2 years before purchasing a rough bush block about 10 kilometres out of town up the Kaukatea Valley in 1853. This was to clear the bush and scrub and commence farming sheep in the steep Papakle country. In the 1850s, this was an extremely remote and hard to reach area, so the settlers were very much on their own. With the increase in hostilities between the New Zealand government forces and Taranaki Maori, David Strawn decided to excavate a cave in a nearby hillside where his family could hide out if they were ever under threat of attack. And that would be the first gun port, so there would actually be muskets sticking out of that to shoot straight up the passageway. Another defensible point there. Yeah, all dug by hand, yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so you've actually got a...
Don't get too close behind me when I'm reading up like that big over
So you got the gun port there. The cave consists of an entrance passage, 2 rooms and a narrow passage at the back. The entrance has a direct and flanking gun ports guarding the entranceway, whilst the long narrow passage at the back is also guarded by a 3rd gun port facing directly into the 2nd room. Although the family had many scares, especially during the Whangaehu conflict of the 1860s, they were never physically attacked.
No wisecracks here, right?
No farting would be more to the point, wouldn't it? No, that's it. So you've got
Here.
So you got
Here.
That's it?
That's well worth looking at, I think, Bill. I know, but you want to stay, you're giving you guide.
And that's about it for another year. But there's just one more site I wanted to check out since I was in the area. It was the site of the Gilfillan attack, just a couple of kilometres down the road from the Strawn Cave. The story unfolded on the 16th of April 1847 when a young Māori was allegedly accidentally shot in the head by a sailor off a naval vessel that was visiting Whanganui. I can't find any details of the incident, but the town's military surgeon tended to his wounds and it appears he did recover. However, a couple of days later, 6 of his mates decided it would be a good idea to attack a random English family in the remote area south of Whanganui, killing 3 children and their mother with a tomahawk and leaving John and his daughter wounded, with 2 other children escaping into the night as the house burned to the ground. Local Māori caught the culprits and they were executed up on Rutland Stockade, which resulted in over 300 warriors attacking Whanganui the following month. Governor George Grey arrived with additional troops and there were several skirmishes over the next couple of months. The fighting eventually ended after an indecisive battle on the 19th of July at St John's Wood, near Lake Virginia, where we watched the coloured fountain the other night. Interestingly, there's absolutely no information on the site of the Gilfillan murders. Well, I did say that Whanganui has a lot of history and it's one of my favourite cities to visit, but it's time to hit the road and head back home. Many thanks go to Philip and Gillian Avery for hosting this year's event and the great people that came along, and to Adam Bennett for loaning us Oxford for the weekend.